Hello and welcome to the Microsoft Azure for IT Pros course. And we're going to look now at Module 1, an introduction to Azure. So what is cloud computing and what are the characteristics? Well, the whole idea is we get access to a phenomenal range of IT servicing capabilities. We are taking away, for example, when we're going to talk about infrastructure as a service in Module 2 and Module 3, we're taking away that conventional having to manage physical hardware and the operating system that's running on that physical hardware away from us in the conventional data center on premise, and that is moving to becoming Microsoft's responsibility from an Azure perspective. We still have to manage our virtual machines. We still have to patch them. We still have to um, configure them how we want them to be configured and connected to our networking environment, but it's much easier to spin up a virtual machine in Azure than it would be on premise, especially from a resource perspective. Self-service, you manage it and purchase the compute components that you actually require, and it's pay as you go. And this is a real big characteristic of Azure. If, for example, let's say we have 10 domain controllers in an Azure cloud service. And those domain controllers are leveraged from 9 to 5 each day. Well, why don't we turn 9 of them off during silent hours? Then we don't actually pay for that infrastructure. We only actually pay for when the virtual machines are running. And that's a really cool advantage of Azure, that you are billed per minute that the virtual machine is running, for example. Okay, and we'll look at some of the pricing as we go on in Module 2. And service resilience and management. Again, if you can imagine the size of Microsoft data centers and the resilience that's built into them, it's pretty astronomical versus what we can really compare that to an on-prem data center. So, looking at cloud service, we can have on-prem, we can have private cloud, public cloud, and that hybrid approach. So on-prem, conventional private cloud data center, we have physical machines, virtual machines running Windows Server 2012 R2, Server 2016. We've got System Center Suite that's managing our infrastructure, whether it's Operations Manager monitoring our infrastructure, Config Manager deploying our operating systems to our clients, Virtual Machine Manager managing our virtualization platform, whether that's VMware or Hyper-V. But all of these things we can actually run in the cloud as well. So we have infrastructure as a service there. And that is a virtual machine that you manage, you look after in the cloud on Azure, on the Azure platform. Platform as a service, however, is slightly different, where it's you are purchasing a web service or SQL server. You don't manage, or SQL database, I should say. You don't manage the infrastructure. You just manage your database, or you manage the web component of IIS, for example. So yes, it's running on a virtual machine, but you don't manage the virtual machine. That's Microsoft. So you'll be migrated, let's say, from IIS on Server 2012 R2 to IIS on Server 2016 when that happens. You don't have to worry about that. And then we've got things like Intune, we've got Dynamics, we've got Office 365, which all sit on Azure, but they're what we call software as a service. We're purchasing that software as a subscription. So where are we from a cloud computing perspective? It's always quite funny to speak to people about cloud. They're very nervous about deploying or moving or migrating to a cloud platform. They're kind of, it's taking away our jobs. I don't think it is. I mean, if we look at software as a service, why are we managing, why are we patching Exchange on-prem now? Which takes days, weeks, months of planning in some circumstances. And why don't we shift that responsibility and give it to Microsoft? And people say to me, well, what's my job now? Well, I'd love to meet an IT department that actually says we are fully manned, we've got loads of time on our hands, and we've done everything we want to. I've just never heard it. There's never enough time, never enough manpower, and therefore if we shift things like Exchange, SharePoint, our virtual machines, we haven't got to manage our virtualization platform on-prem, we can do things like get our Windows 10 deployments done, upgrade our infrastructure to I don't know, Office 2016 click to run, for example. So there's loads of other things we want to be doing, but we don't have the time. And shifting things into the cloud gives us that extra manpower as such, because it takes we're taking away that mundane tasks that we used to have to do that took such a long time to plan and actually deploy. And it can be cheaper, phenomenally cheaper. We obviously you need to strike that balance and work that out and ensure we have the right connectivity into the data centers where we're going to host our environment as well. Um, it is a hybrid world. Let's not pull no punches here. It'd be absolutely crazy if anybody says we'll put 100% of our infrastructure in the cloud. That will come, and I'm sure 10 years down the line, that will be the norm, that everything is in the cloud. But we understand, at the moment that there is that hybrid approach. We're still leveraging existing IT skills and investments. We know Server 2012 R2 inside out. Therefore, that operating system is what's sitting in Azure right now. The users don't even know whether they're in Azure or on-prem. Exactly, if we use things like Remote App, which we'll look later on in this course, that users won't even know where that application sat. They don't care as long as the application is responsive, it works, and they can reach the resources they actually require. And it evolves every single day. This course has been recorded at the start of 2016. I can only imagine by, let's say, June 2016, half the consoles that I show you, the some of the information I tell you will be wrong, outdated, or will have been enhanced and changed. So, it is. The cloud will just keep evolving. And it is easy to use. You'll see the consoles; they become quite familiar. I mean, they're a bit alien to start off with, but as time goes on, they become easier and easier to navigate and easier to use. And it does reduce costs without doubt. We've already kind of mentioned that. And we can have, a public cloud, our private cloud, internal, external, all kind of terminology we have, and hybrid, a mix of the two. So what is the Microsoft Cloud? Well, some pretty cool figures here. Azure serves nearly 1 billion customers in multiple locations around the world. 200 online services. I'm sure that's even incorrect as we speak, in more than 140 countries. And the whole idea is to improve the service availability and the mean time to recovery, and reduce that for our customers. So if we have downtime, it's how quickly we can recover from that failure for the customer to be, back to in a state where they can be working. Automation is so important now, whether you're using Orchestrator on-prem or whether we're using the automation piece inside of Azure. More effective way in which we can reduce human error. If we create runbooks and workflows in which the mundane tasks we have to constantly do, we can reduce that error by using automation. We've already kind of spoke about the responsibility of infrastructure management, cooling, heat, power, etc. It's all kind of shifted over to the Microsoft Azure data centers. So let's have a look at how Microsoft data centers are built. They're purpose built and they're designed to accommodate. You can see on the right hand side there the picture of what the containers actually look like. When you're spending $500 million on a data center, there's some serious planning gone into it. And a figure I was told a few weeks back, Microsoft now manage 32 million physical servers in the infrastructure. That's pretty amazing if you think about it. And they're 40-foot shipping containers that are just kind of plonked in and plugged in, and off it goes. So where are they globally? Globally distributed throughout the world. Microsoft manages them. It's modular. We've kind of saw how they're designed. We've got a picture here actually. There you go. That's what the Microsoft data center looks like inside. High power and water efficiency. For example, the San Francisco data center is powered purely by wind power, and the servers run Server 2012 R2. So we're kind of seeing the inside the data center. Where are they? Oh, everywhere. And I've kind of tried to update this this slide to keep it up to date. So we've got obviously West, East, North, US. We've kind of got Canada West, Canada East that's been recently announced. UK North, UK South. I can't confirm that, but obviously they're not going to be in exactly the same location. But the UK data centers and Germany data centers were announced by Satya, the chief exec of Microsoft, late last year. At the moment, the ones in Europe are in Ireland and in Amsterdam. Like I said, there's going to be 2 in Germany. The actual locations have been announced. I can't remember the top of my head, but there's 2 in India, and late last year there were 2 in Australia were kind of spun up and available. So there are 100 plus data centers. Not every single one is disclosed. There isn't a little sign up outside the data center saying, "Hi, welcome to Microsoft Data Center," and you can kind of see there. We've got twice the amount of data centers that AWS have, 6 times the amount of data centers that Google offer, and they just keep growing. And the largest VMs that we can have in the market: 32 cores, half a terabyte of memory, 3 terabytes of solid state storage with each virtual machine. That's pretty amazing. You can spin that up, in 5 minutes. That's up and running and yours to use. One thing you do need to be aware of, though, is obviously there is service throttling. It's a multi-tenant environment. Many customers sit on that environment, so we have fair resource consumption. And Azure will throttle the service according to the subscription limits, and we'll see some of those limits. It's kind of the minimum that you'll be provided. Let's just say for argument's sake, you purchase a service that has 1 meg of memory, is kind of what your service expectation is. You may, on occasions, get additional resource, so you may be given, let's say, 10 meg of resource, but the service limitation is 1 meg. So don't complain when something's been throttled back to what the service limitation is. So how do we manage Azure? We've got the old full Azure management portal, which eventually will be replaced by a new portal, which I'll show you in a second. You can navigate to the old full portal at manage.windowsazure.com, and we can still manage services. And this is what we call classic mode, effectively, or the classic infrastructure as a service V1 is managed through the old portal. There are still components, as I speak right now, that have to be managed through this portal. For example, Azure Active Directory, Azure Backup, and Site Recovery still all have to be managed through the old management portal. And then we've got the new portal, which we can navigate to portal.azure.com. It's kind of tile looking. Of late, it's become much more responsive than it was in the past. But they're the 2 kind of portals that we'll sit in and actually use throughout this course. But we've also got a few other tools that we can use. We've got the Azure tools for Visual Studio for developers. We've got SQL Server Management Studio that we can use to manage our platform as a service from a SQL perspective. We've got Windows PowerShell, which I'll show you shortly, and the Azure cross-platform CLI. So it's kind of a command line based, Linux command based CLI that the Linux user can use to manage their Azure VMs using familiar Linux commands. So what we need to do is actually go and install the Windows PowerShell. So I'll just jump over to Bing. So let's just type in Windows Azure or Microsoft Azure PowerShell. Download. And here we can say how to install and configure Azure PowerShell. So let's open that up. We scroll down here. Actually, what we do is we install these Azure components using the web platform installer. So we can click here to download Azure PowerShell, and notice what it does. It'll need to download this little executable. Let's run this. And you notice it's downloaded the web PI. And you can see I can click it install, However, I've already got it installed in this circumstance. Once it's actually been installed, so you just purely click install, it'll go and download and install it automatically, and then we can click on the start menu. So let's go to the start menu. Let's open up PowerShell. And let's go and connect to our Azure account. So let's go to, and this is normal Windows PowerShell. We're going to add Azure account. It's then going to prompt me for my Microsoft ID. I'm going to redirect me to the, because I was trying to authenticate directly to Azure AD, so now I want to authenticate against the Microsoft account. So just sign in. And there we go, it's logged me in, and I have 2 subscriptions associated with this account. So if I type in here, get Azure subscription, and it should show me I have a subscription that I've called production, which has my production stuff in, and then I've also got a subscription called demo. Okay. Now, if I wanted to set another, excuse me, you can see here another subscription, another account. Here another subscription here. So you can see at the moment these are true. It's default and is the current. Let's say I actually wanted to work on the demo account, because any PowerShell command I ran would now run against this subscription by default. So we can say select Azure subscription name, and let's say demo, and then we type get Azure subscription again. We can see now the demo is default and it's the current one. So any command I ran against or any command I ran now in this PowerShell session would be ran against my demo subscription and not on my production. And be aware of that in your environment. Ensure that you're always running the commands against the correct subscription. There's also, you can see this is just normal PowerShell, and there's also, if we just, and I've already installed this. If we look at that, we got the Windows Azure Active Directory module. Again, if we run this administrator, this PowerShell module enables us to manage our Azure Active Directory. So if we're doing something on our managing our user accounts in Azure AD, we have to use the Active Directory or the Microsoft Azure Active Directory module. So just be aware, okay. So here you saw me connect to my Azure Azure account. Similarly to we have the old classic portal and we've got the new management portal for Azure. The way I've just connected here using the Add Azure account is the old way and the way we manage our classic machines. When we want to do something called managing our Azure Resource Manager and resource groups, which is a new concept which I'll go through in V2 of virtual machines. Let me just clear the screen. We have to, we do it slightly differently. We'd say login hyphen Azure RM account. In fact, it's probably asking me for my credentials then, but no, it's not. There we go. So it's into my credentials. and there we go. I'm now connected to my Azure Resource Manager mode. Now, there used to be a command which we would use, and the command I used before, add Azure account. Okay, there used to be a way to switch from mode to mode, and it used to be, and you'll see this referenced a lot now in articles and blogs. It used to be switch Azure mode sorry, switch. I can't type today. Switch Azure mode name. You see, the commands aren't even there anymore. It used to be name service. Oh, sorry, it used to be name Azure Service Management. See, it's gone. If you use an early version of PowerShell or we're logged in with the account, it would say this has been deprecated and has now been completely replaced with the Azure RM account. Okay, so just want you to be aware of that. That you may see that referenced out there on the internet, but they're no longer used. Okay, so from a subscription and management and billing perspective, I've just logged in to my Azure account, and I've got 2 subscriptions associated with it. And what you can actually sign up for is a free trial. It's $200 a credit, so it is £120 that I talked about in the first module. And you get that for a month, and you can try it out. And once you've exceeded that, the trial gets suspended. Or, like I said, you can add, or you can say, use my credit card details to bill me. One thing you can't do, you can't use prepaid cards to sign up for Azure. You have to use a full-on debit or credit card in order to do that. If you've got an MSDN subscription, you get a specific amount in Azure based on the subscription that you have. There's a BizSpark program, which is kind of 3 years of Azure credit free for business startups, where you have to go through a website approval process. We've got pay-as-you-go. Basically, you enter your, you pay for what you're using. Each month you'll pay via your credit or debit card, or you can opt in for invoicing if you're a business. And then as part of your enterprise agreement, which you can commit. So you say you want to use a certain amount of resources over a year, and Microsoft will then calculate, the kind of a pricing model for you. So how does the pricing work? Well, we have something called the pricing calculator. And let's just quickly navigate to that. So I'm just going to bang Azure. Right, there it is. User pricing calculator. Let's have a quick look. So let's kind of look at how much compute is. For example, let's have a look at how much virtual machines are going to cost us. Obviously, for every component here of Azure, you can do it in the price calculation. So we're going to put this in. Let's put this in. Can't see it. There we go. North Europe. We want a Windows machine. You could see if it's a SQL Server or a Linux machine, but we'll stick with Windows. We'll go for a standard tier. We'll come across what all the pricing are. Oh, sorry, what all the tiers are later on. We're going to say what the instance size is. We've got the different sizing options here. Let's say, a standard machine on an A3. It's 4 cores, 7 gig of memory, 285 gig disk. You see, it's going to cost us 22 pence an hour. And let's say we're going to run it for 744 hours, which is a month. That one virtual machine is going to cost us £163 per month if it was left on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all month. Okay, and so you can see it's estimated depending on the support options that you want to take out, the storage that's attached. So just be aware there's multiple components that you need to take into consideration when you are trying to work out the pricing and how much resource is going to cost us. What you can do though, and that's a cool thing about version Infrastructure as a Service v2, which we'll talk about in Module 3, is that we can tag resources, and in a resource group we can be, let's say we've got one resource group for all our web services and one resource group for all our server infrastructure, let's say domain controllers, application servers. They're in two different resource groups. We can identify the billing for each, okay, and individual components within those resource groups as well. We can see here, we can see how much we've left a cap, £34 before it gets to the cap. We can see how many compute hours, and you can drill down there. One thing you do need to be aware of is the announcement emails. And about half an hour ago, I got one on my phone just announcing additional some of the premium storage in additional data centers. Just be aware, these are really important emails. Number one, they will tell you of new services. Number two, they'll tell you of any kind of downtime there's going to be over the next, let's say 3 weeks, so you can plan around that. But the announcement emails, they're not war and peace. It's pretty easy to read, and you can pretty much kind of get the gist really quickly just flicking through. When I'm usually on the train, or I'm waiting in an airport lounge, I'll just quickly flick through, say, oh, that's cool, okay, I can see what's actually happening. And just a quick one about version 1 and version 2 machines. This is a big thing that we're going to talk about over the next few modules, is that you'll see kind of references towards cloud services, affinity groups, availability sets, load balancing, virtual IPs and IP addressing, what the DNS name is, endpoints, which are now NAT rules. So I'll keep referring back to this after we've gone through module 1, which is Infrastructure as a Service v1, and from that we can kind of work out what the differences are and why we've moved kind of from this classic model onto this resource manager model. So I hope that's kind of given you an overview of Azure and what cloud is, how we can manage Azure with the old portal and the new portal, and we can manage Azure with PowerShell as well. Remember, there's two different versions of PowerShell. There's normal PowerShell, which we add the module in for Azure, and then we have the Azure Resource Manager, which we log in slightly differently. And we kind of had an overview of the differences between V1 and V2 machines, which will become, like I said, more relevant. Okay, so I hope to see you in Module 2.